Hotep fam and Hetupu. This week we continue in our series on the Gospel of Thomas, unlocking those secrets. And we're going to go through sayings 60 through 74. Sayings, the secret sayings, so-called secret sayings of Jesus, sayings 60 through 74. Thank you for joining me on this journey as we discover what these Gospels reveal about the true teachings of Jesus. Don't always look like what we've been told or what we've grown accustomed to, but they expand upon it and show the other side that Jesus revealed to those within his inner circle. So join me as we explore them together and see what the lessons have to reveal. Thanks, and again, if you will, subscribe, and continue on this journey. And I implore you, if you have comments, please share them, because no one has a monopoly on the truth. We're figuring this thing out as we go along. So let's jump into it, and I'll see you there. Let's recap where we were last week. We talked a little bit about the historical Jesus, even saw a presentation on it where we compared what sources were available to draw us to the conclusion that there probably was a historical Jesus. And then we compared that to how we know there was a historical Gautama, the Buddha, Siddhartha, because from legend, but also from those who knew him and from other sources, independent verifications. Then we talked about how there was not that same level of verification and historical validation for a person such as Moses. And so we saw that Jesus had a combination of the two. He had some from folks who knew him, like Paul, who knew Peter, and Peter knew Jesus, and those types of things. And then we also had some sources like from the scrolls about the Saint Isa and those types of things. So we come to the conclusion that more than likely there was a person by the name of Yeshua, Isa, whatever the actual Aramaic name was, and we come to Hellenize it as Jesus. But there was a person who fit that and went around doing some wonderful things and was a marvelous teacher and instructor in truth. And then we went into the sayings. We talked about not being able to mount two horses or draw two bows, and old versus new wine, how that new consciousness could not fit with the old consciousness, and you have to accept and move on. You have to renunciate or eliminate those things that are not working for you or not for your highest and greatest good, as Pamela had mentioned in her prayer. We have to eliminate those things and be ready to move on to the new. And that's what Jesus was representing, a new way of looking at the scriptures, new interpretation. He said he didn't come to do away with them, but to fulfill them. And we even got a little bit of quantum with some of his sayings about movement and repose. He said he came from the light. And we know how that the light was that source. And we talk about going back to the light. People even talk about going back to the light when they're having these near-death experiences. They say that they were drawn to this light. Say that Jesus came from the light. And he talked about movement and repose, rest and movement all at the same time. And that sort of feels like a wave, a frequency. But it also speaks to the beginning and the end being the same thing, which really is stepping into the quantum realm of experience, that there is no past, present, or future, that all things are happening at the same time. We talk about quantum physics and parallel and multiple universes, multiverses, and all these types of things. So it can get to be a little mind-boggling at times, but Jesus seemed to be aware of what scientists are now just bringing together and talking about the quantum universe, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, entanglements, things being able to move faster than the speed of light, that things happen because of observation. When we see them, it has an effect and causes something to happen. So Jesus was already attuned to all of that, and he was dropping those bits of wisdom in his teachings and sayings. So now we move on to today. What are we going to get into today? We always got something good to get into. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about Constantine, Constantine the Great, who he was, and how he changed Christianity forever. Constantine was an emperor of Rome at a time when there were several emperors. There wasn't just one at that time, and he was looking to consolidate some power. And like Martin Luther King, he had a dream, or so the legend says. He had a dream about, if I use some Christian symbology on my shields when I go into battle, it may have a power and an effect. And he actually ended up winning the battle that he went into, and that was like, maybe there is something to this Christianity thing. And people have always sought to get some sort of an advantage going into war and into battles. You may know that Hitler was actually very much into the occult, and the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark was all about his attempt to gain the Ark of the Covenant, to have it when he went into battle to help assure his victory. The symbolism that Hitler used, the Nazi cross, was that swastika was actually a Hindu symbol that he appropriated. So he was trying to use whatever he could, any means necessary to win. And if I can align some spiritual forces on my side, then so be it, and I'm going to be all the better for it. So those types of folks will use any means necessary to secure a victory. Constantine the Great was no different. He wanted to secure a victory. He did it, and that made him think, well, maybe I should look into this Christianity thing deeper. And he ended up converting to Christianity and began to blend religion and politics. And we know that that can be a very unholy alliance. As a matter of fact, I saw on television just this past week where a school superintendent was trying to get the students to get Bible stories mixed into their curriculum, and that looked like a hot mess about to unfold, because the Constitution specifically states that there's a separation of church and state. We're not going to be a theocracy. We see how those operate in other countries, and then it's not very successful. That's a fallacy when people say, well, America was founded as a Christian nation, and so we have to support this and rally around the cross and everything else. But honestly, it was not so much founded as a Christian nation. When you look at the symbology that we have incorporated, that we use, a lot of it is based off of older, more ancient traditions. In fact, there's a lot of Egyptian wisdom school symbology that's integrated. We even look on the back of the Great Seal of the United States, which is now on the back of our money, and it says, it has the picture of the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, the eye of Heru, sitting on top of it. So a lot of people don't even know what they're getting into. They look at the Washington Monument and they think it's just the Washington Monument, but they don't realize that's also known as Cleopatra's Needle. And so there's a lot of things that went into the planning of this nation that was more based off of Masonic tradition, Masonic theory and philosophy, than it was necessarily purely Christian. And the Masonic took so much of their knowledge and understanding from ancient Egyptian traditions and culture understandings and teachings. So don't let these contemporary folks fool you when they try to get this thing called Christian nationalism and are trying to blend the faith and the politics for this nation. Capitalism is the religion. That is what they worship. They worship that dollar, and that's why it's on there. God and mammon cannot mix. He said that you either love one or serve the other. That's what we talked about, not being able to serve two masters. And so don't get it confused. And so we go into Constantine the Great, and that's what I have a video for you. It gives you a little bit of background on who Constantine was, what some of his motivations may have been, and how he impacted what we know as Christianity forever. Can't deny that fact. That is a truth. Let's recap where we were last week. We talked a little bit about the historical Jesus, even saw a presentation on it where we compared uh, what sources were available to draw us to the conclusion that there probably was a historical Jesus. And then we compared that to how we know there was a historical Gautama, the Buddha, Siddhartha, because from legend, but also from those who knew him and from other sources, independent verifications. Then we talked about how there was not that same level of verification and historical validation for a person such as Moses. And so we saw that Jesus had a combination of the two. He had some from folks who knew him, like Paul, who knew Peter, and Peter knew Jesus, and those types of things. And then we also had some sources like from the scrolls about the Saint Isa and those types of things. So we come to the conclusion that more than likely there was a person by the name of Yeshua, Isa, whatever the actual Aramaic name was, and we come to Hellenize it as Jesus. But there was a person who fit that and went around doing some wonderful things and was a marvelous teacher and instructor in truth. And then we went into the sayings. We talked about not being able to mount two horses or draw two bows, and old versus new wine, how that new consciousness could not fit with the old consciousness, and you have to accept and move on. You have to renunciate or eliminate those things that are not working for you or not for your highest and greatest good, as Pamela had mentioned in her prayer. We have to eliminate those things and be ready to move on to the new. And that's what Jesus was representing, a new way of looking at the scriptures, new interpretation. He said he didn't come to do away with them, but to fulfill them. And we even got a little bit of quantum with some of his sayings about movement and repose. He said he came from the light. And we know how that the light was that source. And we talk about going back to the light. People even talk about going back to the light when they're having these near-death experiences. They say that they were drawn to this light, say that Jesus came from the light. And he talked about movement and repose, rest and movement all at the same time. And that sort of feels like a wave, a frequency. But it also speaks to the beginning and the end being the same thing, which is stepping into the quantum realm of experience, that there is no past, present, or future, that all things are happening at the same time. We talk about quantum physics and parallel and multiple universes, multiverses, and all these types of things. So it can get to be a little mind-boggling at times, but Jesus seemed to be aware of what scientists are now just bringing together and talking about the quantum universe, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, entanglements, things being able to move faster than the speed of light, that things happen because of observation. When we see them, it has an effect and causes something to happen. So Jesus was already attuned to all of that, and he was dropping those bits of wisdom in his teachings and sayings. So now we move on to today. What are we going to get into today? We always got something good to get into. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about Constantine the Great, who he was and how he changed Christianity forever. Constantine was an emperor of Rome at a time when there were several emperors. There wasn't just one at that time, and he was looking to consolidate some power. And like Martin Luther King, he had a dream, or so the legend says. He had a dream about, if I use some Christian symbology on my shields when I go into battle, it may have a power and an effect. And he actually ended up winning the battle that he went into, and that was like, maybe there is something to this Christianity thing. And people have always sought to get some sort of an advantage going into war and into battles. You may know that Hitler was actually very much into the occult, and the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark was all about his attempt to gain the Ark of the Covenant, to have it when he went into battle to help assure his victory. The symbolism that Hitler used, the Nazi cross, was that swastika was actually a Hindu symbol that he appropriated. So he was trying to use whatever he could, any means necessary to win. And if I can align some spiritual forces on my side, then so be it. And I'm going to be all the better for it. So those types of folks will use any means necessary to secure a victory. Constantine the Great was no different. He wanted to secure a victory. He did it, and that made him think, well, maybe I should look into this Christianity thing deeper. And he ended up converting to Christianity and began to blend religion and politics. And we know that that can be a very unholy alliance. As a matter of fact, I saw on television just this past week where a school superintendent was trying to get the students to get Bible stories mixed into their curriculum, and that looked like a hot mess about to unfold, because the Constitution specifically states that there's a separation of church and state. We're not going to be a theocracy. We see how those operate in other countries, and it is not very successful. That's a fallacy when people say, well, America was founded as a Christian nation, and so we have to support this and rally around the cross and everything else. But honestly, it was not so much founded as a Christian nation. When you look at the symbology that we have incorporated, that we use, a lot of it is based off of older, more ancient traditions. In fact, there's a lot of Egyptian wisdom school symbology that's integrated. We even look on the back of the Great Seal of the United States, which is now on the back of our money, and it says, it has the picture of the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, the eye of Heru, sitting on top of it. So a lot of people don't even know what they're getting into. They look at the Washington Monument and they think it's just the Washington Monument, but they don't realize that's also known as Cleopatra's Needle. And so there's a lot of things that went into the planning of this nation that was more based off of Masonic tradition, Masonic theory and philosophy, than it was necessarily purely Christian. And the Masonic took so much of their knowledge and understanding from ancient Egyptian traditions and culture understandings and teachings. So don't let these contemporary folks fool you when they try to get this thing called Christian nationalism and are trying to blend the faith and the politics for this nation. Capitalism is the religion. That is what they worship. They worship that dollar, and that's why it's on there. God and mammon cannot mix. He said that you will either love one or serve the other. That's what we talked about, not being able to serve two masters. And so don't get it confused. And so we go into Constantine the Great, and that's what I have a video for you. It gives you a little bit of background on who Constantine was, what some of his motivations may have been, and how he impacted what we know as Christianity forever. Can't deny that fact. That is a truth.
Bible Compass channel. In today's video, we will explore one of the most pivotal moments in Christian history, Constantine's conversion. Discover the intrigue behind the battle that changed Christianity forever, as we unravel the profound impact of this historical event on the course of the Christian faith. An event can change history and set in motion consequences that will reshape the future for centuries and sometimes millennia. A battle in the 4th century CE resulted in a Roman emperor crossing a river into a new reality for Western civilization. That emperor was Constantine, also known as Constantine the Great. What he decided to do and what he did is one of the most significant developments in history. We start with a picture of Rome at the start of the 4th century. the Roman Empire was a battered shell of what it had been in the days of Vespasian and Marcus Aurelius. Rome endured years of turmoil and tragedy in the 3rd century. 20 different emperors ruled Rome during that period, and 13 were assassinated. Frequent wars, barbarian invasions, and military meddling in the selection of emperors contributed to the general chaos. The empire was so disorganized that Diocletian tried to fix the problem by dividing the empire into a tetrarchy in which 4 men, called Caesars or Augusti, ruled over 4 separate regions. It established stability but set the scene for a succession war when Diocletian abdicated in 305. Flavius Valerius Constantinus, better known to us as Constantine, was the son of Constantius Chlorus, who was the Caesar over Britain and Gaul. Constantine was proclaimed emperor in 306 by his troops after his father died. He then entered the stew of civil wars that plagued the empire as 4 men fought each other to decide who would rule the empire. Constantine's rival in the west was named Maxentius, who happened to be his brother-in-law. Hostilities between the two escalated until a final battle at the Milvian Bridge, located in northern Rome, pitted the 2 men against each other. Whoever won would be the ruler of Rome's western provinces. The 2 sides were equally matched, with each army having approximately 25,000 battle-tested soldiers. The engagement would take place on October 28, 312. The conversion story started the night before when Constantine was asleep. The early Christian author Lactantius sets the scene. Constantine had a dream in which he was directed to put a heavenly sign on the shields of his men. That sign was the Chi Rho, which has an X superimposed on a P and is a common Christian symbol. Constantine did this, and his troops defeated the army of Maxentius the following day. Moreover, Maxentius drowned while trying to escape, paving the way for Constantine to take control of the Western Empire. Eusebius, Constantine's biographer, has a more dramatic story. He wrote that Constantine saw a vision of a lighted cross in the sky with the words, "In hoc signo vinces," "In this sign thou shalt conquer," accompanying that vision. Both accounts make a great story, but did either happen? Probably not. English historian Edward Gibbon dismisses the conversion vision as fanciful tales, and either may have been blatant propaganda to promote Constantine's image. There is an alternative explanation of Constantine's conversion that is more pragmatic than paranormal. Constantine was more than just a great general. He was a very astute politician. The victory at the Milvian Bridge made him the Roman emperor in the West, but Constantine wanted more. He wanted to be the sole emperor, which would require ousting the Roman emperor in the East, Licinius. He could count on the loyalty of the Roman troops in the West, but the East was wealthier. Licinius could finance an army large enough to thwart Constantine and overthrow the Western emperor. Constantine needed considerable support in the East to ensure his plans for the future were successful. He had an ace in his hand and was ready to play. Christians were a minority in the Roman Empire, perhaps only 10% of the population. Nevertheless, many lived in the eastern part of the empire. Moreover, there were significant centers of Christians in Antioch, Alexandria, and Jerusalem. They had survived the persecutions of Diocletian creation, and there was a structured church hierarchy that was able to mobilize opinion within the communities. The Christians could be a valuable source of support. Constantine understood the value of supporting Christianity. He could leverage their growing influence to create a power base in the East that was independent of military forces and traditional pagan aristocracy. It was a practical decision for him to court the Christians and have them believe that he was their great friend and benefactor. Constantine began a campaign of wooing the Christians to his side after his victory at the Milvian Bridge. The first step was the Edict of Milan, which was issued in 313. It granted Christians the freedom to worship throughout the empire and ended any persecution of them. It was a momentous shift in imperial policy, and Constantine and Licinius approved the edict. Constantine went further. He gave financial support to the Christian church, and that included the construction of churches in Rome and other places. Constantine made substantial donations to the Christian community and granted clergy special privileges. That included exemption from certain taxes and required duties. A dramatic show of support came from returning property that had been confiscated during previous persecutions. Constantine also promoted Christians to higher office within his imperial administration. The intent was obvious. Constantine was making the conversion to Christianity a desirable political and social decision. The result was that more people converted to Christianity, perhaps not out of religious conviction but career advancement. Gradually, Constantine was building a solid support base with a prominent group in the eastern part of the empire. What would be the political implications of this? If and when he decided to move against Licinius, the Christians would most likely support Constantine, or at least stay neutral by refusing to join Licinius's army or provide him with financial support. Additionally, the church hierarchy would support Constantine, and if he succeeded, ecclesiastical backing would make his transition to being the sole emperor easier. Constantine and Licinius met for the last time in battle on September 18, 324. Constantine won, and in defeating Licinius, Constantine became the sole emperor of the Roman Empire. The imperium was now under one man as opposed to four. It would be easy to portray Constantine as a saintly man who brought about the conversion of the Roman world to Christianity, but that is only a part of the story of who he was. Constantine had a dark side. He ordered Licinius to be executed after the victory to secure his power as the sole emperor. He would do anything to secure his imperial title, even if it meant killing those closest to him. Constantine ordered the execution of his son, Crispus, for supposedly plotting to seize the throne, and would later order the death of his wife Fausta for possibly being involved in the scheme. Regarding his conversion to Christianity, the question remains whether Constantine was behaving more like a politician or a saint. While he publicly showed signs of being devoted to Christianity, Constantine did not formally convert until he was on his deathbed. The conversion may have been a situation where Constantine coldly calculated his options and decided that having the appearance of being a Christian would provide him with the support he needed to become emperor and maintain control. However, to refute the claims that his conversion to Christianity was a mere political strategy, Constantine continued to display his support for the church even after he became the sole emperor. He was a generous patron of the church and actively promoted the Council of Nicaea when heresy threatened the existence of Christianity. It was during this council that the Nicene Creed was drafted. Constantine's mother, Helena, was a devout Christian, and he actively supported her efforts to find the true cross. We can let historians debate the true nature of his intentions. The consequences of Constantine's active support of Christianity changed the direction of the history of Western civilization. It was a game changer for Christianity. During the 4th century, Christianity faced severe persecution. However, as more churches were built and theological questions were resolved, conversions started to skyrocket. Aristocrats began to realize that Christianity was the key to power, leading to many of them converting to the religion. As a result, the numbers of other religious groups began to decrease. Eventually, in 380, Emperor Theodosius issued the Edict of Thessalonica, which made Christianity the official state religion. This marked a significant shift as a belief that was once persecuted became the primary spiritual power of the empire. The motivations behind Constantine's choice to align with the followers of Christ are a topic of ongoing debate. However, this decision triggered a significant social change that would continue to shape the course of nations and peoples throughout Europe. Christianity became a powerful force in society, inspiring all forms of Western art and shaping the development of European thought by the teachings of the doctors of the Church. All it took was a heavenly sign, which may have happened in the sky near an old Roman bridge. A minor religious sect of an enormous empire would soon become the shaper of events, making the words "in hoc signo vinces" come true. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. We hope you have gained valuable insights into Constantine's conversion and its implications.
All right.
PSA, if you have wavy
That was Constantine. It seems like the more things change, the more they remain the same. Politicians still uh, using the Christianity as a means of securing power, even when they obviously have not committed to it. But it is almost like a litmus test to say that you are a Christian and to be able to gain access to power. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And it also mentioned the fact that Constantine gave uh, the religious leadership special advantages, taxation benefits, and so forth, and that continues to this day as well. And that's why the tax code is as it is, that ministers or churches granted that special tax exempt status. So we see that people really don't change. Our circumstances, our conditions, the culture around us changes, but at heart, we basically are the same people we were before. And we'll use whatever leverage we can to secure power. People love power. So let's get into our sayings for this week so that we can go through them all. Have time to go through them all. We're starting with saying 60. Anyone wants to read it?
I'll read it.
All righty.
All right. They saw a Samaritan carrying a lamb on his way to Judea. He said to his disciples, "This man is round about the lamb." They said to him, "So that he may kill it and eat it." He said to them, "While it is alive, he will not eat it, but only when he has killed it and it has become a corpse." They said to him, "He cannot do so otherwise." He said to them, "You too look for a place for yourself within repose, lest you become a corpus and be eaten.
A corpse.
Right, and be eaten."
So, thoughts on that? That's a interesting little opening.
I got the second half.
Got the second half? Okay.
You cannot do so otherwise. I mean, wait. Find a place for yourself within repose. Is that going into the silence?
That is it. The repose, meditation, the silence.
Yeah. And the first half, it seems like it's common sense. That's all I got about that one. So.
It is a bit of common sense in it as well. He sees this guy carrying a lamb, and he says, "What's he going to do with that thing?" And they say, "He's going to probably kill it and eat it." And then he said, "Well, it's alive. He can't eat it when it's alive." And they was like, "Duh, no S, Sherlock. We got that." But Jesus was making a spiritual point. He obviously he wasn't just talking about the common sense and the obvious. He was saying that in order to consume something, it has to be killed. It has to become a corpse. And he was saying the world can also turn you into a corpse and consume you. That you can be slain by all these things that are out here in the world, all the concerns, the cares, what you have your mind devoted to, as opposed to being centered and in repose. That's where he talks about going into meditation, that you have to go into that still quietness in order to prevent yourself from being overtaken by the world, becoming in effect, in essence, a corpse, dead in your thought, dead in your thinking, dead in your possibilities, dead in your hope, dead in your aspirations, dead in your vigor and vitality, dead in other way other than that you're still breathing. But at that point, when you're dead, that's when the world can consume you. They can eat you up. You're saying that these people will eat you up and spit you out. And that's what he's talking about. So you have to prevent yourself from getting into that state by maintaining your peace of mind, your calmness, your security, And that's how we prevent ourselves from becoming like that sacrificial lamb, slain, roasted, and got some lamb chops out of it. On to the next one. Saying 61.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay.
Joshua said, two will rest on the couch.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Will live. Salome.
Salome.
I'm breaking up?
You were pretty good now. You're pretty good now.
Okay. Okay. Salome said, who are you, mister? You have climbed on my couch and eaten from my table as if you are from someone. Joshua said to her, I am the one who comes from what is whole. I was given from the things of my father. Salome said, I am your student. Joshua said, I say, if you are whole, you will be filled with light. But if divided, you will be filled with darkness.
Right. So it's almost as if like two things are being said here. And some of these we have fragments. We don't always have the full context of what was going on. Jesus spoke about two resting on a bed. One will die, the other will live. He could be talking about just the randomness of life, how that things happen to people that there's no control over. It says it rains on the just and the unjust.
Yes.
Or he could be talking about something different in terms of how it says that some will accept and others will not. Some will be taken up and others will be left behind. There will be two. Could have of two minds and two opinions in the same household. And within ourselves, we can have conflicting opinions, diametrically opposed opinions that sometimes can tear us apart. And Salome, not the one who danced for Herod, more than likely, when John the Baptist was killed, but they're just like we have people with common names, similar names. But she was like, "Who are you? Like you coming up here like Mr. Big Stuff? Tell me, who do you think you are?" And so she had to say, I am one who exists from the undivided, from the one. That's a lot of what what Thomas talks about as being from the one, the oneness. He says, I'm from the undivided, that there is no separation. I was given some of the things of my father. And so she's like, well, I'm your student then. I'm here to listen. I'm prepared to listen. He says that he will be filled with light, but if he is destroyed, he will be filled with light, but if he's divided, he will be filled with darkness.
Yes.
So it's again talking about the division, the separation, that you can't have it both ways. You can't be in the world and of it. You can't be in the material and in the spiritual. You can't draw two bows. You can't ride two horses. So much of what he talks about is that oneness that we have to become a part of. And when we are not divided, that's when we can be filled with light. That's when we have to destroy the outer, destroy the material to step into the spiritual. But if you're divided, you're going to be filled with darkness, and you will not be able to have the illumination that Christ consciousness brings to us. So we keep seeing those metaphors of light, of oneness, those repeated themes, repeated patterns that go out throughout. All right, let's go to saying 62.
Jesus said, it is to those who are worthy of my mysteries that I tell my mysteries. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Is the first half talking about worthiness, meaning awareness? Someone is aware?
Could be awareness, or could just be openness. Yeah.
Openness.
Right. Receptivity.
And the left hand, with the right hand, it's about being open and just not when you give, to give freely. That's all I got about that one.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I kind of put it in a sense of the average person has like more than one personality. You have your church friends, you have your close friends, you have your relatives, and it's like, you know, you have those on the left and those on the right, and don't let those on the left know what the right hand is doing, because not everybody is with you and for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I kind of, put it.
Okay. Any other thoughts on it?
Mhm.
Because we've all
This
heard
is
that expression.
Yeah, this is just a comment here. I'm working with it's the Gnostic Bible, where my Gospel of Thomas is coming from, and they said that first sentence is partially restored, so we don't have it all. I just wanted to comment on that.
Okay.
Interject that.
As I said, that's a lot of these things are fragments. They're pieces. It would be great if we had everything, but this is all that survived after 2,000 years. So we have to put it in some sort of context and infer and make conjecture and fill in the blanks, as they say, and sort of say what logically would make sense in the situation. But
Can I say something?
Please do.
Because I couldn't see us being fragmented like that. Left hand, right hand. That right there. Was being divisive or whatever. Dividing us. So I was thinking that maybe it's saying that it has to be interchangeable.
Okay, that's
like
one.
your left hand needs to know what your right hand's doing, and vice versa. So it's non-duality, that non-duality concept.
Some ambidexterity going on there.
Yes.
Jesus said, even in Mark, he said that he taught some in parables, and then others he reserved for the secret teachings, and that's what these are supposed to be. Some of the secret teachings or secret sayings of Jesus. So he's saying that it is to those who are worthy of my mysteries that he's going to tell the mysteries, because not everybody is open to it. Not everybody's going to receive it. Even has the saying, don't cast your pearls before swine, because you basically could be wasting your time trying to give them something of great value, that pearl of great value. And if you don't value it, you're not going to appreciate it, and you're going to end up like those swine trampling over it. And then you just wasted your time and theirs, and you destroyed something of great value. So he says, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not speaking this out to the folks who are not ready to hear it. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and for those, I'll share these mysteries, share these teachings. It said at the beginning, if you understand the interpretation of these sayings, then you gain access to that oneness. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. That could also be talking about the church itself, or the what was going on at the time in terms of the structure of the Jewish traditional system, and that you don't have to tell everything that's going on. You keep some things. That's what these secret teachings are. They weren't for everyone. So you don't have to report everything to everybody that you're doing. Some things you can keep in quiet. It's like when, what was his name? Nehemiah was rebuilding the temple wall. He asked for permission to do it, but he didn't tell anybody what he was doing when he went out in reconnaissance and took a look and a watch over it, because he didn't want anybody to dissuade him from his vision, to dissuade him from his purpose, what he knew, what it is that he had to do. I didn't have to tell everybody. I had my consultation with Jesus, with God, or with the Lord, Yahweh, Jehovah, whoever he went into his own personal relationship with that, got what he needed to do, his mission, his assignment. And once he was in alignment with his divine assignment, he went about carrying it out. So you don't have to report everything you're doing to everybody. Some things you keep quiet and just know what you need to do and go about your business of getting it done. So it's also when Jesus talked about giving alms. That's what Cindy may have been referring to, that when you give, you don't have to shout it out. I gave this, I did this. Wasn't I good? Look at me. When you pray, you can do it in silence. You can do it in quiet. You don't have to make a show of it, a grand display. And that was also an occasion when he talked about not letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
It's like it says when you pray to go into your secret closet.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Your prayer closet.
Dr. Barber used to say, keep something for yourself. Don't tell everybody everything. She would be, give you something and she'd be like, keep it for yourself. Don't tell everybody everything.
Exactly. It ain't for everybody.
Right.
They say some people can't hold water. They couldn't hold it if it had a handle on it. So, you got to reserve some things, some sanctity there, that inner sanctity, that inner holy of holies, that's just you, between you and God. Everybody ain't got to know everything. You're telling too much. You're saying too much. Saying 63.
Jesus said, there was a rich man who had much money. He said, I shall put my money to use so that I may sow, reap, plant, and fill my storehouse with produce, with the result that I shall lack nothing. Such were his intentions. But that same night he died. That's the truth. Let him who has ears hear.
There's a similar one in the Gospels. You guys familiar with that story?
Yes, the one about the farmer.
Yes. You want to tell about it, Marvin?
Okay. He had barns. He had land, property, and he was trying to increase his property. And when he had what he thought he had, he said to himself, so you can take your rest. And that night he died.
Yep. So it's a very similar story. It's slight little deviations in it. Like in the canonical gospel, it tells the story. The man was already a landowner. He already had all these things, and his barns were filled, and his storehouses were, so he had everything. And what he said, I can chill out. I can kick back. I can eat, drink, and be merry. That was one of the lines, one of those statements that he made in that one. I can eat, drink, and be merry. And that his soul was taken that night he died. So in this story, which is very similar, he had not yet purchased the land. That was his intention to do so. He was going to go about that, but that same night he died. So same moral of the story. But again, as we tell stories, we don't always tell them the exact same way all the time. We could talk the stories of Anansi the spider, the West African stories, or the trickster. That was Anansi, which became down in our tradition. Uncle Remus got it and he changed it, and those stories became stories about Br'er Rabbit and Br'er Fox and Br'er Bear, songs of the South. But each time those stories were told, most of the time they were told orally. And so when we have that oral tradition, as we talked about the griots, it's not going to be a verbatim exactly the same time, but the moral of the story, the truth that it imparts, is the same. And so it's the same thing that you can't. My dad, grew up on the farm. And he said you can't count your biddies before you hatch. You can't count your chickens before they hatch. That you don't know what the future entails or holds for you. And so you can't just say that I'm going to kick back and take it easy, because we never know when our time is going to come. It can happen quickly, suddenly, some simple mistake we make, or not even we make, but someone in the car driving in the other lane happens to make a mistake that takes us out. We never know. So be prepared. So basically that's what he was saying, that don't take anything for granted. Don't take your life for granted, what you have. You can't take any of these things for granted, because they can easily be taken away from us. Saying 64 is a long one.
It sure is.
Any volunteers? Okay, go ahead.
Maybe we can break it up. Maybe we can break it up
Oh, sure.
into two.
Okay, that's a great idea. So let's see. Uh, somebody wanted to do the first three paragraphs and somebody concluded. So the first one ends about being excused from the dinner.
Jesus said, a man had received visitors, and when he had prepared the dinner, he sent his servant to invite the guest. He went to the first one and said to him, my master invites you. He said, I have claims against some merchants. They are coming to me this evening. I must go and give them my orders. I asked to be excused from the dinner. He went to another and said to him, my master has invited you. He said to him, I have just bought a house and I am required for the day. I shall not have any spare time. He went to another and said to him, my master invites you. He said to him, my friend is going to get married, and I am to prepare the banquet. I shall not be able to come. I ask to be excused from the dinner.
Okay, now who picks up next?
He went to another, saying, my master invites you. He replied, I have purchased some real estate and I am going to collect the rent. I will not be able to come. I ask to be excused. The slave came back and told his master, those you invited to dinner have excused themselves. The master told the slave, go out into the street, and whoever you find, bring them to dine. Better pay attention to this.
Okay.
I guess that better pay attention was meant for us.
And in our version, it concludes with businessmen and merchants will not enter the places of my Father.
Okay.
Okay, any thoughts?
I check. Everybody's busy with the wrong things here.
Uh-huh. They're busy.
They think it's a big thing,
but none of them are bad things.
No, they weren't. They're all good things. Taking business, but they did not recognize what was before them.
Mm-hmm.
That invitation. And not having done that, they missed the boat.
Mm-hmm.
They missed out.
They missed out. Mm-hmm.
Does this go back to like the last would come first, or because none of these came?
Mm-hmm.
So they definitely won't be first. They'll be last.
Mm-hmm.
So go out in the community and bring whoever will come.
Uh-huh. I think what was interesting about this thing is what we said before was that they weren't engaged in anything that was nefarious. They weren't bad things that they were doing. In fact, they were engaged in enterprise. They were engaged in business. As you said, they were taking care of their business. But they were consumed with the business of the world. They were concerned with making money. All of them in some way were about their business, and it was about making money in some way. One had claims against a merchant. He had to go deal with that legal issue that was before him. Another had just bought a house and he had to go collect, some real estate, had to go collect some rent. Other one was going to be catering a wedding, so he wasn't just attending. He said he was in charge of the banquet, so he was probably also going to make some money from that as well. And on it goes on about them putting the need to make money over taking advantage of this spiritual opportunity, this opportunity that was before them. And that's what we have to be cautious of and careful as well, is not to put the desire and the greed to make money. And there's nothing wrong with making money, and he didn't argue against that. It was that what do you have as your priority? We often misquote the scripture that says money is the root of all evil, when the scripture actually says it's the love of money that's the root of all evil, because that can consume us and get us distracted from what are the most important and the most valuable things that we should place at the forefront of our priorities. Um, we see it, as I said, the more things change, the more they remain the same. So many who said that it was about the economy, it was about inflation, it was about this, it was about that, uh, to excuse what was obviously untruths and misinformation and disinformation, because they were all about the money. Yes, Gail.
I also saw it as uh, basically the same as 63,
Mm-hmm.
um, where you can't count your future before it comes. He decided he's going to have this big banquet
Mm-hmm.
and then say, go invite.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, okay,
Let me check with the people.
yeah, check with them
Let me
first.
do an RSVP.
I'm not going to make a big meal and then start calling my friends over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, hey, I would like to make a big meal. Can y'all come? This weekend.
that, that's an interesting way. That's a valid way of looking at it. You say check the RSVP, but we know that opportunity, that the universe doesn't always give us a RSVP.
That's true. That's true.
When opportunity comes, you have to be open and prepared to receive it and move in the flow of life that brings it to you, because we can be reasonable people. They had good reasons for not showing up. But sometimes being reasonable is the last thing that you need to be. Because being reasonable sounds like a good thing. If anybody told you, Gail, she's a reasonable person, you would pretty much accept that as a compliment. But a lot of times in landmark education, I know Dr. Barber went through landmark as well. They have this, what they call this distinction, and it says that being reasonable is the wrong thing to be. Sometimes we have to be unreasonable in our demands, because being reasonable means that you have all these reasons why. In other words, reasons translate as to excuses for why you can't do something. You're reasonable because you always got a reason. Well, I can't do this. I got a reason I can't do that. I got a reason I won't be able to show up. I got to go over and attend to this. Are you going to come? I got something special for it. Well, I got another reason I can't do it. It's because I got to do this. We're full of reasons. We're reasoning people. Always got a reasoning or an excuse for why we can't participate, why we can't enjoy life, why we can't get the most out of it. And that's what it was speaking here in the many ways of, don't be reasonable. Be unreasonable. This guy, as you said, Gail, had made an unreasonable request on them. To our way of thinking, that's unreasonable to say you got this big dinner planned. You didn't ask me, you didn't consult me about it, so I got other things to do. But it's talking about not in the physical, but in the spiritual. You're not always going to get an alert and a warning, a RSVP that you can respond to. You have to be open and in the moment. And when spirit moves, you got to be ready to move with it. Saying 65. We have another good man here. Who wants to read this one?
He said, there was a good man who owned a vineyard. He leased it to tenant farmers so they might work it and he might collect the produce from them. He sent his servants so that the tenants might give him the produce in the vineyard. They seized his servant and beat him, all but killing him. The servant went back and told his master. The master said, perhaps he did not recognize them. He sent another servant. The tenants beat this one as well. Then the owner sent his son and said, perhaps they will show respect to my son. because the tenants knew that it was he who was the heir to the vineyard, they seized him and killed him. Let him who has ears hear.
Okay, another familiar story from the Gospels.
Well, he should have sent his cousin Benny.
Everything right there. Luigi.
Did we read something about that?
Forget about it. You're asking, did we read something about that last night?
Oh, that was just me talking to us.
So basically, they were sharecroppers. What's going on? He had an arrangement. He leased it out to farmers to work it, and basically they had to deal. Well, you grow it, and I'll come and I'll take my cut of it. I'll take my share. That's better than how we had it as sharecroppers here in America. They basically they was just another form of servitude, another form of slavery. So they had the land, they work it, they get all the pay for it, and they gave you a little pittance of it, a little portion of it. And that's how it worked for many of those that we descended from in this country. After the end of the official legal end of slavery, they just sort of rejiggered it, gave it a different title, and called it sharecropping. But at the end of the day, the sharecropper always ended up owing the owner of the estate. But in this instance, he actually seemed like he was a good man. It starts out by saying he was a good man. He was a fair person. He was not trying to treat them. He was not trying to get over on them. He had established an agreement. They'd accepted the terms, but they did not honor or respect the terms. So he sent somebody over to collect what was due. Okay, we have a vineyard. You guys have the grapes ready. I want to start making my wine, so I'm going to send my servant. Some versions it says a slave. I'm going to send my servant, a slave, over to collect. And they said they beat him up almost to the point of death, all but killing him. So they put a severe beat down on him. And so he said, well, he tried to excuse it and say, well, maybe they just didn't recognize who he was. Maybe they didn't recognize him. So let me send another one. I'll send my more trusted servant. They know this one because he's had some interactions with them in the past. And they did the same thing to him. They gave him a beat down as well. He said, well maybe it's if I send my son, they got to know who my son is, and they'll respect that. And they say, yes, we know who you are. You're the heir, so we're going to kill you. And that's what they did. They seized him and killed him. It could have been prophetic, as Jesus was talking about the what was happening in terms of the prophets that had been sent before him, and how that they had gone and they didn't receive the prophets. They didn't listen to them. They didn't heed what the prophets were saying. And that eventually God the Father sent the Son in the form of Jesus to come, and they ended up killing him. That could be a prophecy on how he would die. It could also be just about, everybody's not going to honor their words or their intentions. Everybody's not going to be trustworthy in business dealings. That you have to have your eyes open for them as well. Or it could be about the Old Testament versus the New, that people were not willing to accept a change. They were not willing to accept this new consciousness that was arising, and that they beat down all those who were bringing this new message, this new gospel, if you will. And at some point, it's going to provoke something within them that they will resort to violence. And we see that a lot of times when people, knowing they are in the wrong, still resort to violence to sort of justify their deeds and their actions. They know they're done dirty. They know they should have no business up in a capital, but yet they find some ways of justifying their actions. So again, more things change, the more they remain the same. They're not going to even respect those who do respect. They're not respecting the Constitution. They're not respecting tradition. They're not respecting the office. They're not respecting any of those things that would hold them, you would think, to a certain sense of decorum and integrity and obligation to do what's right. But they're going to create their own narrative to do what they want to do if they see some benefit of it. People haven't changed. Saying 66.
I'll read it.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua said, "Show me the stone that the builders rejected. That is the cornerstone." Would you like me to read the next one too?
We'll go through this one, but you can read the next one if you would like to after we go through this one. Any thoughts?
Okay.
Any thoughts on it? This was Bob Marley talked about this one. Wrote a song about it.
Hmm.
But they're talking about Jesus being rejected, Jesus being the cornerstone,
Mm-hmm.
and Jesus, being the light of the world, Jesus being the cornerstone, and that Jesus was the one that was rejected.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bob had personalized it because he personally felt rejected, being the son of a white land, sort of a overseer type person. He was sort of rejected and bastardized as not black enough and not white enough and sort of in the middle. And that was something that sort of fueled his passion throughout his life. And that was one of those driving factors and forces in him. That the one that you rejected, now look at me, I'm the international superstar. It's also about recognizing what's of value. The thing that you have dismissed as having no value. You've rejected it. You've dismissed it. That thing could be the most valuable thing at all. It becomes the chief stone or the chief of the corner, not necessarily the cornerstone that they're building on, but some have said it. You could even see it almost like the capstone of the pyramid. That the pyramid at the very top, they would load that miniature type pyramid right on top of it. That capstone that capped it all off. All the attention and honor and glory is going to the thing that you didn't think was worthy of anything. You despised it. You despised, as Pam was saying, that my Jesus, when he could personalize that, but it's also a truism for beyond just him speaking about himself. But generally, people don't always recognize what's of value. He's had that saying when he talked about the pearl of great value, that they didn't recognize it. A person went and sold all that they had when they recognized it, they saw it and purchased it. Or the person that there was the landowners that didn't know they had valuables on their land, that there was gold on their land, and they sold it. They had gone into poverty, looking outside of the land, trying to find their fortune, and someone purchased it, found what was there, and was able to make their fortune based off of what was already there because they recognized what was there. That's a lesson to us, is to be able to recognize and appreciate what is truly important. Just as it was when he was talking about those who were going about their business, trying to make money, but they weren't recognizing what was important and what was there with them. Jesus had told them before, I'm with you right now. You have access to this. Don't go and looking for the dead prophets to try to get the information. When you have the living word embodied right here with you right now, focus on what's important. He'd even told them that there'll always be the poor. There was some that said that when he was anointed with oil, the expensive ointment. They said that we could have sold this. Judas said we could have sold this and given the money to the poor or fed the poor. And he said the poor will always be with you. I'm with you right now. Recognize what's happening in the moment. Be able to recognize what's going on in the here and now and not be so concerned about what's happening later. Just as he said about the one who was going to build the barns, the silos, fill them with grain and kick back and chill. It didn't happen. His soul was taken that night. So don't worry about what's to come. Deal with what's here and now and recognize what's important and what's of value in the now so we can get the most out of this experience. Saying 67.
Okay. Joshua said, one who knows all but lacks within is utterly lacking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I looked at it as you may think you know it all,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't. Even the people that say they are master of everything, how's that saying go?
Master of none said something about know all.
Yeah, master of everything. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That one.
Mm-hmm.
And you it's like you think you know it all, but
Mm-hmm.
you are so complete. Like what the book says, you're lacking in every way of so many things, even what you think you know.
Mm-hmm. Because
I have a little thought.
Go ahead.
From the Ten Commandments, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people they can keep this one and that one, but it does say that if you committed one, you've committed them all.
Right.
So I'm thinking of this lacking in that sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
If you lack one thing, you lack everything.
Mm-hmm.
You lack in every way. I don't know. Just you know.
Hey, you know, we all speculating on this as well. So you know, every opinion is valid. Every opinion is valid because it all shines a light on in a different way that we may not have thought of, a different perspective on it. Like I said, if you think you know it all, that in itself tells you how deficient you are because there's so much to know. Again, another landmark thing they talk about, you know, there's different areas. We know what we know. We know what we know. We all have those areas of competency based off of our past lives, our experience, our education, our training, what we've been exposed to. There are some things that we know, like you may have a recipe and you know it and you know how to execute it. I don't know your recipe and I'm going to try it. I'm going to mess it up. There are some things that we know that we don't know. We know that, I don't know if anybody on here is a brain surgeon. I don't know if anybody on here, you could be an architect, but we know about brain surgery, but we know that we don't know how to do it, and we're not going to attempt it. And anyone who allow us to attempt it on them, I pity the fool for that. But then the vast majority of things are the things that we don't even know that we don't know we know. If we look out into the vastness of this universe, the solar system, not even the universe, just look out at what's in this solar system right here, that there's so much we don't know. On this planet, there's so much we don't know. We don't know what's in the depths of the oceans and so forth. There's unexplored terrains and worlds right beneath us. They're constantly saying we found this new species that we didn't know existed. We didn't know about it. So if you don't know, and then you assume and you purport to know all, that just shows you the ignorance that you are, how completely deficient that you really are. And if you are one of those who has access to information and you have the web here and the internet and chat GPT and you know all these things, but like it says in Paul wrote, you may have that wisdom and that knowledge and the gift of prophecy, but it could be just sounding brass and tinkling cymbals if you don't have it connect to the truth of it. You can know about it, but do you actually know it? And that's when we talked last week about being connected to the vine, the true vine, that not everybody is connected to that vine that gets the oneness and connected, and that realizes their connection to the oneness. They are already connected because there is no separation. They're a part of the oneness. But if you don't recognize that, then you feel that you have a deficiency, a personal deficiency. It says you feel that. Didn't say that you actually have that. Said still feels a personal deficiency. It's like that prodigal son who had access to everything, but went out and went away from it, tried to separate from it, feeling that he needed something more, that there was something else I could acquire. Felt that he was personally deficient in some way. There's something else I need to be happy. We seem to always be at that state that when we get what we ask for, we're still not feeling happy or complete, and we feel that there's still that lack or limitation. Say, if I could just get this, I'll be happy. They get it, still not happy. Well, if I could just do this, they do it, still not happy. Or I could just earn this amount of salary. They earn it, still not happy. Well, if I could just live in this neighborhood, they get the house there and still not happy. Well, if I could just drive this car, they purchase the vehicle and still not happy. There's that deficiency that they're getting all that they were asking for, but yet they're feeling personally deficient because there's that deficiency that is within themselves. There's a hole that needs to be filled and completed. And unless they can do that, no matter what you get, what you know, what you learn, what you earn, what degrees you get, you're still going to feel completely deficient because what you're looking for has been within you all the time. You've been looking without, trying to find what can fill what's already there within you.
You know, I also think about that saying that Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Indeed it is. And that's why we have to be concerned about, Jesus said, what happens to the least of them happens also to me. So you can't go about this 1%. You're seeing, the Elon Musk and the Bezos and all these billionaires, and you're trying to live your life of how they're living. When they don't give a hill of beans about you because they can't even relate to what you go through. So we can't see that America is great based off of how the best of us are doing. We have to judge the greatness of this nation based on how the least of us are doing, how those who are marginalized without. We see some homelessness rising. We see the growing disparity between those who have and those who don't have. We have to measure our greatness by what the least in society are able to achieve or accomplish or have, the dignity that we can bestow upon them based rather than what the best of us can achieve and acquire. Saying 68. Sounds like from the Beatitudes.
Jesus said, blessed are you when you are hated and persecuted. Wherever you have been persecuted, they will find no place.
So this one's similar to the Beatitude. But the Beatitude had added in there that saying, when you're persecuted for my sake. Right. So there was a little bit of a different read on it. But basically, it's saying that, as we were talking about those who were marginalized, those who were uh, despondent, those who are in some way being having their justice denied in some way by society. Blessed are those people. Jesus said when he came, he said, I came to set the captives free, those who are in bondage and so forth. He outlined his mission when he came and spoke from the scroll from Isaiah. Um, he was speaking about justice, coming to provide justice for people who have been denied it. We've often had that phrase, no justice, just us, because it seems like we've been picked on and persecuted and prosecuted in so many ways that were not based off of justice in any way. So, but in that, it also has developed, I think, a greater spirit of compassion, empathy, and all those things within us as well. That has kept us attuned with the spiritual nature of people, of man, of humanity, because we know that we couldn't rely on man. We had to rely on that deeper source. We had to go to God. We had to steal away in the middle of the night. We had to find what comfort we could from knowing that our connection, what was happening in our circumstance, was not the truth of who we are, and that we were greater than this. And that was sort of that faith that sustained us, faith that the dark past taught us, and hope that the present has brought us. We say it in the Negro National Anthem as penned by James Weldon Johnson. Yes, Gail?
When I read this, it was funny. I said, oh, that must be a misprint. Because what I saw was, blessed are you when you are hated and prosecuted. Wherever you have been prosecuted,
or persecuted,
or persecuted, excuse me, they will find no peace.
No, rather than place.
Yeah, I said, oh, they, it's a typo. I said it's supposed to be peace and not place.
Yeah, well, they will, I guess, find no place within themselves, because why are they persecuting and persecuting? Why are you hated? Jesus said to love thy neighbor as thyself. I always sort of take a different take on it and say you can only love your neighbor as you love yourself, because you can't love yourself, truly love yourself, knowing who you are, and then hate anyone else. You're going to treat them at the level that you have internalized what's going on within yourself. They say hurt people hurt people. So you're taking that out on somebody else. You're taking it out on the migrants, those who are coming across just to try to get something for themselves, to secure something for their families. You demonize them because there's something within you that feels less than. We talk about the whole concept of white superiority, but what is being expressed is really a deep-seated sense of white inferiority, because why else would you hate, persecute, and try to deny someone else their civil rights, their legal rights, their human rights, unless in some way you felt that if you did give them an equal playing field, they're going to outdo you. They're going to surpass you. They're going to take something that you think is inherently yours, but you are so insecure about it, you're going to put up whatever barrier you can to giving them the right to vote. Say you're only 3/5 of the person, so you can't even have the full right to vote because you outnumbered me in the South. And if you had full rights to vote, then you're going to overrule me. People think about how they would treat other people, and they operate from that. There's a story of Nelson Mandela, who was, after he had been released from Robben Island and was elected president, was in a restaurant, and saw another person over at the counter about to order. He said to have that person come over and join us. The person came over and joined, but all the while throughout the meal, that person would not look him in the eye, would not acknowledge him. And when it was over, they asked about that, and they said, "Who was that person?" He said, "That was the warden of the prison that held me for 27 years. That was the one who oversaw my torture. That was the one who treated me inhumanely." And his greatest fear, that person was shaking throughout the meal, was that I would treat him as he treated me. But I'm not about that, because that's not who I am. And that's what it was, a demonstration of love right there. When you can you only love your neighbor as you love yourself. That warden obviously didn't love himself, because how else could you subjugate anybody to torture and personally oversee that, unless you have something that's going on within yourself? And that's why they can find no place. That's why they can find no place of peace within themselves. Jerusalem literally means place of peace. So maybe, Gail, they did omit that last piece of it. They can find no place of peace. They can find no place to rest. They can find no place of comfort. They can find no place of acceptance, even within themselves. They can find no place to be, because that's not who they truly are. We all made in the image and likeness of God. Even they are a part of the one. But they are feeling that deficiency that we talked about, that self-deficiency we talked about, that they don't even know who they are. Saying 69. And we keep on the persecution theme.
Jesus says, "Blessed are they who have been persecuted within themselves. It is they who have truly come to know the Father. Blessed are the hungry, for the belly of him who desires will be filled."
So these people are introspected. They persecuted within themselves because they know they found fault within themselves, what they've done wrong. They come to accept that, no, I'm not perfect. They got it. And they have suffered as a consequence of it. But that type of mentality is what leads you to the awareness and the knowledge and the reconnection. It was like with the prodigal, when he said he was willing to eat what the pigs were eating. And he said that even my father's servants have more than I have. But when he came to himself, he had to come to that point where he acknowledged that I've done wrong. I'm not worthy to be called your son anymore, and I'll work for you as your servant, is the speech he prepared and was ready to say to his father. But he acknowledged the error of his ways. He had that much self-reflection and introspection to realize that, and that was the self-persecution that we're talking about in this. Not that you're torturing yourself, but when it comes to the point where you're ready to repent and know that it's time for me to do something different, when you get to that point, that's when you can come to know the Father. And that's when he actually met his father, the prodigal, for the first time, because as he went with his prepared speech to say how unworthy he was, his father had already seen him from a distance and was on his way to greet him. Blessed are the hungry, for the belly of him who desires will be filled. When you're hungry for righteousness, when you're hungry for an enlightenment, when you're hungry to know the truth, when you're hungry, blessed are the hungry, for they shall be filled. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. But you have to have that desire within to know the truth, to seek it out. Let's go on to 70.
Yahshua said, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have, will save you if you bring it forth from yourselves. That which you do not have within you will kill you if you do not have it within you.
Does that sound like a tongue twister?
Really? I think on this for a minute. I've used this phrase, this saying.
So you use this one?
I have in my writings, and just in general, I like quoting it.
Okay, and how did you intend it in your writings, and in what way, and what were you trying to express with it?
People have to go within, to find, what sustains them, or life, what sustains life is within you, and you have to come away from outer, things, materialism, false teachings, illusions. You have to come away from that, because that will leave you void. And, I don't know about kill. I always think that's a strong word there, but
So I think it's killed in the spiritual.
Spiritually, you die.
Right.
Yeah. Spiritually, you're dead. Yeah. So,
I think that's spot on to me. That what you already have within you, you can acknowledge it. Those gifts that you possess, what you've been endowed with, what God has given you, that what you can bring forth, your creativity, your things, your insights. Those are the things that can save you. But the things that you don't have within you, that you're trying to appropriate from somewhere else, if you don't have it within you, you can't fake it. And those things could be spiritual death to you, because they could leave you wanting and you feeling lacking. What do you call it? The imposter syndrome, when you don't have it within you to do it, and then you feel like you're going to be found out. Now, for some of those, that's just over cautious and over fear, because many of those who have that syndrome actually are confident and can do it. But there are some who know that they don't know what they're doing. They know their level of incompetence. The scary part is some of these folks who are being appointed to offices, cabinet positions, who know they're incompetent and don't have it within them to do it, and still are stepping up, and you having scandal even before they take office, and some have to drop out of the process because they know what skeletons are in their closet. It's amazing to see and watch that sort of unfold. Let's go to saying 71. I'll read it quick then. Jesus said, I shall destroy this house, and no one will be able to build it. Now we know that there was a similar thing when he was in the temple, as he said, I can destroy the temple and raise it in 3 days. And they were like, well, Solomon took decades to build this thing. How are you going to build it in three days? And he wasn't talking about the physical structure. He was talking about the temple of himself, predicting his resurrection. But also, I think in this instance, he's talking about destroying this thing that's come before, this structure that you created called religion, and all the things that you set up around it. It's like Humpty Dumpty. All the king's horses and all the king's men aren't able to put it back together again, because when I'm finished bringing the sword of truth and bringing the justice and righteousness and right thinking, and the kingdom of heaven is at hand, that what we're getting rid of, this thing that you created, is not going to be able to sustain, and nobody's going to be able to rebuild it. So I think he was speaking with a spiritual metaphor. And we've got a couple more to get through. I know we're at 11, saying 72. A man said to him, tell my brothers to divide my father's possessions with me. He said to him, O man, who has made me a divider? He turned to his disciples and said to them, I am not a divider, am I? That seems like Jesus is almost joking with him at that point. He says, I'm not a divider, am I? But Jesus actually said he did come to divide, that he did come to not to bring peace, but to bring the sword. So it's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what he took away from that, but it seems like Jesus had a bit of a sense of humor too. 73, Jesus said, "The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Beseech the Lord, therefore, to send out laborers to the harvest." We see that one in the scriptures also. Basically, that's verbatim. And the canonical Gospels, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. There's lots of work to be done. There's lots of things that we need to do, lots of truth to unfold, but not many people are willing to go to the effort to get there. Not many people want to invest the time, research, effort, contemplation, introspection necessary. So we have to send out the laborers to the harvest. We have to send out those who are able to shed some light, who are able to be missionaries, to share the truth, to share His word. Because there are a lot of people who may be receptive, but there are not a lot of people who have had the opportunity to hear it. The harvest is plentiful. There are many out there who might be open and receptive to hearing the truth, but we have to get those out there to share it. How can they follow it unless they hear? And how can they hear unless there's someone to tell it? In saying 74, our last for the day, he said, "O Lord, there are many around the drinking trough, but there is nothing in the cistern." That's been time down on the in islands, like down in the Virgin Islands and other islands where there's no real fresh water sources, not many of them. They often collect the rainwater in cisterns, big cement or metal containers where they have water to use when necessary. And here it seems like people, just like we said in 73, there are many people who are receptive to the word, might be open to it. There are many around the drinking trough. There are many who are looking for something. They're looking to be filled. They're looking to be satisfied. They're looking to have their thirst satiated. They're looking for it, but there's nothing in the cistern. The well is dry. There's no water there. And what he's saying is that with traditional religion, there are lots of people who are actually looking for something to affect their lives, to change it, to have some impact or some power to make their lives better. But for too many congregations, too many on Sunday mornings, too many in the mega churches, too many that you go through who are not getting anything that is truly able, that living water that he promised, the Samaritan water at the well, something that can enrich, can refresh, can change their lives, and to quench that thirst for information, for understanding, for enlightenment, for illumination, for knowledge, for consciousness. There are many who are looking for it, but there's nothing there. You led the horse to water, but there is no water in the trough for even the horse to drink. You say you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If they're thirsty enough, they will drink. But if they're thirsty and there's no water, there's nothing for them to drink. He's saying that's what he's saying, that there's a movement afoot. There's people are open to this movement of consciousness. And we have to have those out there who are willing to share the truth so that they can hear it, so that they can get something from it. He told the Samaritan woman, if you drink of this water, you'll never thirst again. And that's the type of water that he's talking about, that spiritual water. There's nothing in that cistern. Nothing for them to drink. And that was saying 74, and that's all for today. And we'll move on, starting with the next saying the next time we get together.